Hello and welcome to Knitting on the Lake. My name is Kelly and I am your host. Thank you so much for joining me on my second episode ever of Knitting on the Lake. And I would like to thank very much everyone who came by the channel last week and checked out my first episode. If you are new here and seeing this for the first time, you can go back and watch episode 1. Right before this one in the playlist. And I would particularly like to thank my knitting group from the Unruly Stitch in Weston, Massachusetts. They really have just wrapped their collective arms around me and supported me sharing my podcast and just commenting and delivering all of the words of support and encouragement that I needed as I embark on this journey. So thank you especially to them and to all of you. Welcome. Last week we focused a lot on my plan to knit a vintage cardigan, a cardigan from a vintage pattern that was published in a McCall's magazine dating back to 1977, which I'm not ashamed to say was the year before I was born. And fun fact, I was supposed to be born in 1977, but I was a few weeks late, and so I arrived in January of 1978. So let's first talk about what I'm wearing. I am wearing a brand new pattern, just launched yesterday. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. It was launched on Tuesday, February 18th. This is by the designer Thea Coleman, and the pattern is called Potato Vodka. And it is a cardigan. As you can see, I'm wearing it open right now because I'm sitting, and that's generally how I wear it when I'm seated. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this pattern and my experience knitting it. This was my first time knitting a Thea Coleman pattern. Thea is also known as Baby Cocktails, and I have been following her designs for quite a while and really just love and appreciate the range that she brings, the level of detail that she has in her designs. And when I saw the prototype that she had knitted for this particular pattern, I jumped at the chance to test knit it. So not only was this my first time knitting one of Thea's patterns, it was my first time test knitting for her as well. I happen to have these yarns in my stash. I had originally allocated them to a different pattern, and I kind of changed my mind. I decided that I would rather knit this one, and I have absolutely no regrets about that. That is kind of how my stash tends to evolve. Not to get off topic, but I often get inspired by yarn and feel like I need to have a pattern in mind in order to buy said yarn. But then what will happen is I'll take the yarn into my stash, and I will over time see other patterns that might be more appealing or maybe more suitable to the yarns that I bought and really loved in the first place. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So the two yarns used in this, yes, there are only two yarns used, even though you see so many different colors, are Spincycle yarns Dream State, which is this pink and green and purple and gray color changing yarn. And it is a worsted weight. And the main color, this charcoal gray, is Cascade 220 Superwash Merino. And it is like somewhere between a worsted and a DK weight, and the color way is charcoal. And so I knit this up, and Thea's pattern was inspired by this really cool old family photo that she had found where the women in the front row are wearing these clearly handmade sweaters that were really something that they would have worn because it was the thing that they were most proud of. You could tell that everyone in this family photograph was kind of wearing their fineries. And so she wanted to kind of take that feeling and that idea and modernize it. And so this construction, well, not the construction, but the technique used is slip stitch color work. So it is done working with only one color per row, and you just slip the stitches of the color that you're not working in that row to kind of continue the pattern. So this has obviously vertical stripes, but there's purling that also creates texture on the right side in addition to the vertical striping. So I really loved the pattern. I think it was super addictive and really fun to work up. And even though sometimes the mosaic color work seems to take longer, this flew off of my needles, and I just really enjoyed making it. It has some really interesting details, such as this visible shoulder seam, which looks cool, like a neat design feature, but it's actually a really easy way to put it together. It has pockets. This was my first time making anything with pockets, and while they are not super functional, they're like about this deep, they are very cute, and it was a really kind of a fun project to learn how, one technique of creating pockets, and I feel like if I wanted to, I could probably modify a sweater pattern or a cardigan pattern and add pockets on my own. This is what it looks like on the wrong side, just in case you're wondering. Because of the vintage inspiration for this cardigan, I really wanted to add vintage buttons. So these buttons were from my grandmother's stash. Last week, I think I showed you a tin full of all sorts of buttons, most of them mismatched. These I actually had, I think, 5 of them. I only needed 3 for this particular project. I honestly don't know how long I'm going to keep them on. The way that they attach is a little bit flimsy. It's just a single hole kind of protruding from the back. I don't know if you can see it very well. So they're a little bit floppy on this fabric that the yarn has made. So I really like the look, but I don't know if they're going to be the most sturdy buttons to keep on this long term. But if I end up wearing this mostly open like I am right now, which is possible, maybe they will have a little more staying power. So the one other thing I wanted to talk about is just a couple words on test knitting. I'm probably going to do a separate episode down the road all about test knitting, when I've kind of started dabbling in it in the past year, and I've test knitted now for a pretty good number of designers in a variety of different types of projects. And I have seen definitely a range of approaches and had different experiences. And I have to say that I really enjoyed working with Thea on this test. She is super professional, and she really takes to heart the feedback that she receives from her testers. For her, the test knitting process is not about collecting assets for promotion of her pattern, although she definitely is great at promoting her pattern and utilizing the images of the finished garments that people have made. You can tell that that's not what it is about for her. She really takes it seriously and wants to make her patterns as good as they can possibly be, and as clear and functional as they can be for the knitters that buy her patterns. So I not only recommend to anyone interested in test knitting for Thea that it was a great experience, but I can also recommend to anyone who would consider knitting one of her patterns that I think you can feel very confident that her patterns are not only tech edited very expertly, but also tested very thoroughly, and you know, created by a designer who really cares about the details and about making the best pattern possible for you. So anyway, that is my little spiel on the potato vodka cardigan, which you can find on Ravelry and I'm sure other locations as well. I wanted to also mention I am on a different side of the room than I was last week. I was getting a little too much glare on my glasses. I must be filming at a slightly different time of day. So I switched sides, and I'm kind of on a landing of my house that is facing the front of the house with good natural light coming in. But so it's not really a room, it's open to a hallway, which then leads to stairs that go both up and down. I am an interior designer by trade, and so this is a room that I designed for my family. Our house was built in 1896, and I definitely took a lot of inspiration from the period, but also brought in a lot of more contemporary elements. The most important thing to me for this area was that I wanted it to feel cozy. And one of the ways I accomplished this was the wall color, which I get a lot of questions about. And I got a question from someone last week from the podcast, and I wanted to just share the name of the wall color, which is by Benjamin Moore, and it is called Townsend Harbor Brown. I can't remember the number of the color, but it's from Benjamin Moore's Historic Colors collection. So it's an HC-something, something, something. It's Townsend Harbor Brown. And it's an example of the types of colors that I tend to favor, which are a little bit enigmatic. They may be a little bit hard to put your finger on. You know, even though this is called Townsend Harbor Brown and may be kind of classified by Benjamin Moore as a brown, when I see this color, I honestly see more of like a plum, raisin, you know, reddish, brownish, purplish kind of color. You know, if you ask 10 people to describe the color, you would probably get 10 different descriptions of it, but it is definitely one of my favorites. And again, I'm just sort of flipping to the other side of the room. So there's some artwork above me. I hope it's not too distracting. All right, so before we get to the vintage cardigan and my progress and next steps, I wanted to share one quick little finished object, actually two finished objects that I wanted to share before they fly out the door. I am planning to do a whole episode about finished objects and works in progress next week, but this particular project is not going to be around by then because I have to ship it out because they are a gift. I knit two baby blankets. Let me see if I can show you before I unfold them. They are for my cousin's babies. She had boy-girl twins on New Year's Day in the wee hours of the morning. So I'm pretty sure that at her hospital, and probably even in her city, she had the very first twins of 2025. So very exciting. I was really excited to knit these matching but not matching blankets. And I am gonna have to show you on some pictures, which I will insert. But I wanted you to be able to take a look at them in person, and I'll show you some close-ups of the stitch details. This is the Glamping 2 baby blanket pattern from Casapinka. And actually, it's not just a baby blanket pattern. It can be made in a variety of different sizes. And the baby blanket size is not even the smallest size. There is a cat size blanket that you can make, and all the way up, there's also a lap blanket size, and then a full big mama back of the sofa type size. And I really like the kind of stitch sampler approach to this pattern. And that was one of the things that attracted me to it. I'm not a big baby blanket maker, and it had been quite a while actually since I finished a baby blanket. Note, I said finished a baby blanket. I tend to lose steam on them. But I hoped that this kind of pattern would keep my interest a little bit better. And I was right, it definitely did. The yarn that I used was one of the recommended yarns, which is Berroco Vintage Chunky. And that was another reason that I chose this pattern, is that I figured that these would work up pretty quickly in a chunky weight yarn. And Berroco Vintage is just a fantastic yarn to make anything for kids and babies, because it's very soft and it is very easy to clean. You can machine wash it. I think you can also dry it. I would personally not dry it, but if it goes through the dryer, it's probably going to be fine. You can just lay it flat to dry. So I picked out 4 different colors for each of these blankets, one for baby girl and one for baby boy, or four colors for baby girl and 4 colors for baby boy. The one shared color is this off-white color, which is called Mochi. The interesting thing, I'll talk about the yarn for a second before I go back to the pattern. I have a little mini review of the pattern for you. The Mochi color I found, oddly, even though it's the exact same yarn, just a different color from the other colors, I found that the Mochi was a lot more round and firm in texture than the other colors, especially the heathered colorways, which, it's kind of hard to explain, but you could pinch it and it would kind of flatten, whereas the Mochi one was just very, very round and firm. Now, when you knit it up, you really can't tell that there's any difference. I mean, they're all the same gauge and they knit up and everything looks like it goes together. But I don't know if anyone knows anything about that or why that phenomenon might occur, if there's some sort of processing that happens when the yarn is dyed that would cause that to happen. But if you have any idea why, please feel free to comment, because I would love to know why. I picked out this pattern again, thinking that it would be kind of an engaging and fun, but a quick pattern to make, especially since I had to make 2 of them. And I did enjoy making this. However, I wanted to raise a little bit of an issue that I had, which was that there were actually at least 3 errors in the pattern that I found. And there were several sections that I didn't complete because of the size that I made. If I had made a larger size, it's possible that I could have encountered even more errors. I think, it's not, we can't expect things to be perfect, certainly. I think we have kind of come to expect things to be to a certain level and maybe even perfect, because we are accustomed to seeing patterns go through a testing process and be tech edited before they even get published and available to the public for purchase. I don't know if this pattern was tested, but if I had to guess, I would say it was neither tested nor tech edited. There were errors, different types of errors, typographical errors, errors with counts. And I think the most frustrating thing for me was that I wish I had seen this before I bought the pattern and started knitting it. But there were several people commenting on Ravelry of the issues that they were encountering. And it's possible that they were responded to directly on Ravelry, but there was no reply available to the public for other people to benefit from if the designer did kind of, provide a solution or a remedy. There was no errata provided, and this pattern is at least 2 or 2.5 years old. So there was definitely adequate time for something to be published or for the pattern to be revised and just, uploaded again and updated. It definitely does happen that patterns are updated. And I guess I'm kind of wishing that this pattern had been updated. Going through this process have really, underscored for me the importance of test knitting and of tech editors, even for a seemingly simple pattern like a flat blanket that doesn't necessarily have any sort of graded sizing because it's just a flat rectangle. There's definitely still a lot of things that can go wrong, especially when you have many different types of stitch patterns that require precision with your stitch counts and the types of stitches and maneuvers that you're doing. So I can't say that I would recommend the pattern. I mean, I am definitely was able to complete these blankets. They look great. But it was a little disappointing to have to work backwards a couple of times and to have to make assumptions about what the intent of the designer was without really having an accurate set of instructions to go off of. And the thing is, once you lose that trust, once you see a mistake, you just kind of get into this mode where you're on pins and needles for the rest of your time, and it's not as enjoyable to knit that way. So to all the designers out there who are using tech editors and working with test knitters, I just want to thank you because it makes a huge difference, and I think it would have made a really big difference with this blanket pattern. So these are getting shipped out, and I hope that my cousin's babies love them. I think they're going to be perfectly sized for strollers or, rides in the car seat. That's really, I think, the most useful size for a baby blanket these days. As we know, babies do not have loose bedding in the crib anymore. That is a very very antiquated idea. It's not safe to have loose bedding, so these become more of a, an on-the-go piece. So let's get back to the subject of my first episode, which was knitting a cardigan from a vintage pattern from 1977. And as a reminder, in case you weren't here last week and didn't see the episode last week, this is a picture of the pattern. I will not hold it in front of my face so you can hear me. It is called Vertical Stripe Cardigan. And it is published in this McCall's Stitchery series, Winter Warm-Ups. So I pretty much right after I filmed last week's episode, I left for a ski trip, and I just returned last night. And my intention was to knit at least up the cuff and onto this, onto the sleeve and up, getting into the color work at the bottom of this sleeve. Unfortunately, that was just a little ambitious, and I did not get that far. But let me show you what I did accomplish. I cast it on, so that was something. And I did the ribbing, basically. So I did it's just a 1x1, knit 1, purl 1 rib. I've got stitches falling off here. And although I did say that I want to knit this pattern kind of to the letter of the pattern as much as possible without making modifications, I do not consider the type of needle that I utilize to be a modification. Obviously, this for knitting in the round in 1977, you're going to be using, you could use circular needles, but they did not have these short circumference type needles, or shorties, as they are sometimes called. And I have recently gotten back to using shorties for my sweater sleeves. And so that is what I'm using in this case. I am highly allergic to double pointed needles. The only situation that I will use them if I have to is like at the kind of crown decreases for a hat. But generally I'm still using magic loop in those cases, you know, and I'll use the short circumference until I can't any longer. So this is my progress, not great. But another thing that I did, which was really important just to kind of get me set up to have as good of a knit experience as possible, is I took the charts in the pattern and I translated all of these symbols, these X's and O's and dots that represent colors. And I actually created in Stitch Fiddle the charts that correspond with that in my colors, or in the approximation of my colors. So this pattern is out of print, by the way, so I don't think it is a big deal for me to be showing charts on this. I looked online, and McCall's doesn't seem to have any sort of like catalog of knitting patterns. They do still publish sewing patterns and have some archived sewing patterns, but knitting patterns I did not find. But anyway, I've done this on a couple of other projects recently. Even when more clear charts are provided, I find my brain works a lot better when I actually have my color palette in the chart. And that way I'm not having to kind of do any translations on the fly and trying to remember, okay, is the darkest one or the second darkest one, the, you know, whatever. So this is the sleeve chart, and this is what I had hoped to complete and kind of get above this. And the sleeve cuff kind of goes right here. This is the orientation of the sleeve chart. And then the chart for the body of the cardigan, which goes on either side of the edge. And I think it goes across the back as well, although you can't really tell in the one picture that is provided in the pattern. This is the body chart. So it is going to be knit this way because, again, this cardigan is knit sideways. But the way that the cardigan will be oriented is this way. This is how it will kind of go like down here. So I will show you the yarns again, but that is the approximation of the color palette on those charts. So this is the main color. It's oatmeal. This is Lamb's Pride, brown sheep, Lamb's Pride bulky in the oatmeal colorway. This is the darker accent color. It's called Pine Tree. Then we have this kind of tone on tone idea. This one is called Smoky Sage. And then the fourth color, which I didn't know I needed, until I read through the pattern more carefully, is this purple. And the purple is a Reynolds Lopi original. And I'm actually not sure of the colorway. It's only a number, color 0163. And I bought this yarn at Wool Cotton Company in Cambridge, Massachusetts. and it must have been well over 20 years ago that I bought this. That store has not existed for quite a while. And this yarn I also bought at a now defunct yarn store and overall craft destination in downtown Boston called Windsor Button. So if you've been around the Boston area for a while, you're into crafts or DIY, you will definitely have heard of Windsor Button. I don't remember when it closed, but it has been gone for a long time. And I lived in Boston when I used to frequent that store, and true to their name, they had a lot of buttons, but they also had a really fantastic yarn selection as well. They had been around for so long, and it was one of those places you thought would probably just live forever, but alas, it did not. So that is my progress on the vintage cardigan. Again, not nearly as much as I had hoped. What's the plan for this vintage cardigan? I need to say that I really don't have a deadline for it. I have certain milestones that I was hoping to meet each week so I can show you a little bit of progress. I obviously fell short of that this week. While I don't have a set deadline to finish the cardigan, I do want to have it done for the season where I could wear something like this outside. I feel like the wear a sweater as a jacket season in New England is probably going to happen around the end of March and into April. So my goal is to complete this, I would say by the beginning of April, maybe like the first week or two of April. And that way I could get a little bit of wear of this piece in before the season ends and it becomes too warm. So that is my goal. And, but again, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm definitely thinking it could be possible, even though I'm going to work on a lot of other projects while I, also, chip away at this one. Again, because it is a bulky weight, garment, I think it is going to go pretty quickly, even though there is some color work and, rereading the pattern, there's also some very confusing directions. For example, I have to write some additional information on these charts because in a contemporary pattern, you would probably find a different chart for each size, or at least for groups of sizes. In this case, what they've done is kind of assigned letters at certain points of the charts and said, for X size, go from F to B once, and then from D to E 5 times. So it's a little bit extra stuff to keep track of in your brain while you knit. And so again, I think it'll be a good experience. I think there's definitely some places I could get tripped up in making this, but we will see how it continues to go. And so I will aim to have definitely some color work done for next week, maybe even a whole sleeve so that I can be ready to go with starting the body of the vertical stripe cardigan circa 1977. All right, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about, which is a test knit that I'm about to begin. And I've got a lot of other projects in the works that, again, I'm going to talk about in detail next week. And this will probably be a work in progress by then, but I'm kind of jazzed about it. So I wanted to mention it now. It's a test knit for a designer that I really wasn't aware of until very recently. Her name is Rita Dowd, and she is on Instagram as Lyman Crafted, and it's Limun. And I am just kind of getting to know her and her aesthetic. I think she seems really talented and detail-oriented, but I think this might be like her second design that she's published. She only has one design on Ravelry, and this is a a test knit that she published on Yarn Pond, which I joined earlier this year, actually probably at the end of last year. It's a place where if you're interested in test knitting, you can sign up and see different designers publishing test calls and looking for test knitters for their pieces. And it's a great place for designers as well who may not have, hundreds of thousands of people following them on Instagram and Ravelry, where they can just sort of drop a line and get hundreds of applications for their test knit. Yarn Pond is a great kind of community for matching up those designers with test knitters who want to knit their projects. So again, this is a project by Rita Dowd. It is called the Woody Vest, and it's just a simple textured vest, and it has like some horizontal ribbing and vertical ribbing. And I have been itching to add another vest to my wardrobe, and I've got loads and loads of sweaters planned, and didn't really have any vests planned out for this year. And so I jumped at the chance to test this for Rita, and I went to the yarn store today and found some yarn that I'm really excited to use for this project. It is the Shelter by Brooklyn Tweed, and this color is called it would help if I could talk. Old World. Say that 5 times fast. And I'm not sure how the color is going to come across, so I will try to describe it, and I may have to show a still image of it as well. It's definitely a tweedy yarn. It's woolen spun, so it's definitely more rustic appearance. It's lighter, I don't feel that it is very itchy, actually, even though a lot of woolen spun yarns tend to be a little more rough. It's very light and lofty, and I love all of these tweedy neps that are included in this. There's reds and pinks and turquoise and blue, maybe some purples. I saw this online and I thought it was gray, but when I picked it up in person, definitely getting navy blue, kind of like this deep, deep navy blue, which I think will look so good with jeans. I'm like a denim person. I wear my knits a lot with denim, and I realized that although I love the color blue, blue on blue jeans doesn't always work unless you have the right color denim, but like a darker navy blue could be maybe a little more versatile with lighter denims, maybe even black jeans or other colors. So I know I probably need to branch out a little bit. I also have a pair of these like plum purple colored corduroys that I think this would look really good with. So this test is going to take place over the next several weeks. Again, I'm going to be working on this at the same time as a bunch of other stuff, but it's going to be a quick project for sure. It's the Woody Vest by Rita Dowd that I'm testing, and I think the pattern's going to be coming out in April, maybe in mid-April, but I'll definitely keep you posted, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to cast on and share my progress when I film next week's episode. So that is all I have for today. I ran a little bit over what I was expecting, but there were a lot of things that I wanted to share and talk about. Thank you so much for joining me again for episode 2. I will be back next week to share finished objects, things that I've recently completed in the past 3 to 4 weeks that I still have in my possession anyway. And that was not given away as a gift, such as the blankets that I shared today, and as well as any works in progress, and of course, updates on the vertical stripe cardigan pattern from 1977 and knitting that up and hopefully everything will go smoothly with that and I'll have more progress to share than I did this time around. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Happy knitting.